Hi, I'm Jenny Keeler. Welcome to my chord tutorial. Alright, what a chord basically is. People don't like the sound of notes just at random. Sounds bad. And the reason is because the notes are right beside each other. People don't like that sound. So the idea of a chord is that you take a note and then you skip a note and go to the next one. And that sounds pleasing to most people's ears. Then you skip a note and there you have 3 notes that are pretty much as close together as you can get and still sound kind of pleasing. So this is a chord. A chord is this, if I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's 1, 3, 5. I can move this up and down anywhere on my keyboard. So you can see already it's starting to sound like something familiar. So the idea of non-clashing notes is pretty important. When you have a chord as close together as it can get like this and still sound good, the lowest note is the name of the chord. This is a C, so this is a C chord. You might say, maybe you're not familiar with the keyboard at all, so I should probably back up. You can see there's a pattern of 3, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, and so on. There is this pattern because that names the notes on the keyboard for us, and they're just a repeating pattern of 7 notes. So if I find a group of 2, any group of 2, black keys, and I go to the white key immediately to the left, this is a C. So this is a C. And the alphabetical order obviously starts with A, so let's back up to A, B, C, D, E, F, G. It's just a pattern. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So if C is my bottom note of my chord, when it's in root position like this, then this is a C chord. Now sometimes you've probably heard people doing something really impressive that sounds like except for one note in there. All of that was just me playing the C chord, and instead of playing the notes all at once, I was sort of breaking them up. And it sounds really impressive, but it's not really that hard. So that's called an arpeggio, when you go from the bottom to the top or the top to the bottom, just rolling on your chord. Now, I don't have to keep my chord in root position. It's helpful so I know the name of what I'm doing, but I can split these notes up between my right hand and my left hand. So maybe I can play a C down here. Already got a song started here. Or I could maybe put the, let's take the E out. We'll put the E down here. It's still a C chord. It's still the notes C, E, G. I just have them a little bit out of order. Or I could play something like this. So I've got a C, a G, an E, a G, and a C, but it's still a C chord, C. I've just split the notes up between my hands. Now this is important to understand that when you play the piano and you're trying to songwrite especially, typically your left hand is going to move in octaves or eighths, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So like both of them are C. My hand's just moving in octaves. Sometimes people will add what's called a fifth. So if you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm not playing the third note of my chord, but I'm playing the bottom and the top of the chord and then the bottom again. And this is a common thing for people to put in their left hand. And then you play the other notes in the chord with your right hand. Now, this leads me to the fact that chords move. And you don't just stay on the same chord for your whole song, you move. But it's not that complicated. They tend to move in what's called a progression. Not all chords sound good one after another, so there's really a limited number of patterns that you can use and that sound good to people. And so a lot of people use the same order for their chords over and over again. Most songs are only like 3 or 4 chords repeating. So this is a really common one I was just playing. You've got a Now let me just play the bass to make that the simplest possible. I'm going to start using Roman numerals now, because that's how we name chords in music theory. We name them by Roman numerals. So a C chord here is a 1. That's Do in my key. So I'm in the key of C. That's a Roman numeral 1, major chord. So it'd be capital Roman numeral 1. This would be a Roman numeral 2, but because it sounds sad, it's minor, not major, we would use a lowercase 2. This is also minor or sad sounding, so we would use a Roman numeral 3 that's lowercase. Now this sounds happy, so that's major, and that would be a capital Roman numeral 4. This is a 5, capital. This is minor, so it'd be a lowercase 6. And this is just all screwy. It's a diminished chord, so you lowercase with a little circle. This is diminished 7, and this is back to 1 again because it's C. So when we go back to 1, it's capital Roman numeral 1. So the pattern that I was just doing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I went from 1 to 6 to 4 to 5. And so my pattern is 1, 6, 4, 5, 1, 6, 4, 5, and I can do all sorts of chords on top of that. You might recognize this chord progression already as heart and soul. Heart and soul, I fell in love with you. Heart and soul, the way a fool would do madly. Da 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 da. And you can see it just repeats. 1, 6, 4, 5, over and over and over for the entire song. Unless you think I'm just teaching you one song that you never wanted to play. Many, many, many songs have been written on this same chord progression. For example, I always tell my kids, if they remember anymore, Katy Perry's Firework uses the same pattern. You don't have to change every 2 beats. Your chord could change every 8 beats if you wanted. So I think Katy Perry's is a little bit slower. But she goes, da 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 da, firework. Come on, show 'em what you're worth. Make 'em go ah 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 as they shoot across the sky. Baby, you're a firework. Da 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 da. So you can see it's still just 1, 6, 4, 5. I mean, there are some wildly different styles of music that all use the same chord progression. And a chord progression is just a set of chords that you repeat over and over in the same order. All songs do it. Another really common chord progression, instead of going 1, 6, 4, 5, another common one is 1, 4, 5, 1. That's a really common one. So you could write a song over that. You just So what I tell the kids is just pick a chord progression that's already out there in existence. You could do this just for practice if you don't want to say you're really songwriting. And just as simple as it needs to be. I mean, if you can do whole chords, then do whole chords. Pick a speed. Maybe I want it to go slower. and then come up with your own melody on top of it. So instead of Firework or Heart and Soul, I could sing like da 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 da. So I've already come up with a new song, basically, completely different. As I said before, many songs are built on these same patterns. You can buy whole song books of 1, 4, 5 songs. I've got one that's just 50 songs. So to songwrite, you just pick a chord progression, as simple as just playing the bass note, or you can play the whole chord. Hum a melody on top that's different from the original. And then the next step is to come up with some sort of accompaniment patterns, so you've got a rhythm going on. Or you could start with a drum track and then put your bass to the drum track if you've got technology, which can be fun. But let's go back to my my tune I was just making up here. Come up with some accompaniment patterns. Some common ones people do, they'll just roll up their chord and down, so they'll go, that's just a C chord, or they'll go, or they might go, that's Alberti bass, or they might go, let's see, what's another really common one, they'll do, like a more of a syncopated pattern, or they'll roll up and do a syncopated pattern. So those are just some common accompaniment patterns, or you could just chord along. That's kind of boring. And after you've got this accompaniment pattern, then you need to come up with a hook or a riff, something that repeats over and over again that's kind of catchy. So let's say I'm doing my as my 1, 6, 4, 5 pattern as my bass, and let's take a note from Coldplay. They like to do, they just go back and forth on the notes of the chord. So let's make something up that's like that. Hum a melody on top. To my chords here. Hold on. It was 1. There we go. 6, 4. So you just come up with something kind of catchy to go on top. And then you write lyrics on top of that, which is my weak spot, obviously, along with writing hooks. If you've ever read a book, though, and said, oh, I could have written a better ending than that, you may feel that way about the chord progression you choose. So maybe you're getting sick of this 1, 6, 4, 5. Maybe you want to change it to 1, 6, 2, 5. You could do that. So all of a sudden I've got 1, 6, 2, 5. And suddenly you've got a whole different song. It's okay to deviate from the chord progression that you started with. Let your ear be your guide to what sounds good to you. Now, I've been really, really understating or simplifying chords. Obviously, there's more than just this root position chord. There are also non-root position chords. So if I say take this G and I throw it down here, it's still a C chord, even though G is my lowest note, because when I have them as close together as they could possibly be, C is my lowest note. But I don't have to play them that way. So I've got non-root position. I can throw the E down here. I could split them up between 2 hands. I could also do 7th chords. People really like those. If you start from the bottom here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you're playing 1, 3, 5 when you play your chord. But I could also add 7. People really like the sound of 7th chords. I could take my root and pop it up here, or take this one, pop it up here. That way it fits easier under my hand. That's where you get into sort of jazzy sounding chords. And modern pop harmonies, they are not just root position chords. They use lots of clashy notes, and this has sort of been building since the 50s, I think. But it really took off in the 80s and 90s in pop music. So pretty frequently, instead of seeing 1, 3, 5, you'll see a second in there instead. Or you'll see a fourth, which really pulls you down until you resolve the chord to that third. So this is how you get songs like this. So basically, it actually makes songwriting easier because there's fewer wrong answers than maybe there used to be.